Hey, Summer, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you doing?
Good. Sorry to be on so early.
No, don't apologize. It's all good. Hey, Ben. Oh, I think you're on mute.
How's everybody doing? Sorry about that.
No worries. Good. We're getting in the home stretch here.
Home stretch. You know,
And
when the
then
weather starts to get warm, it means the session's about to end.
I love it. Just in time for Annette to get her weekends back.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Annette has just been, I know you're on, Annette, and maybe not able to talk, but putting together these PowerPoints is not easy. And just much appreciated the work you've done with it.
Thank you, guys. I'm definitely excited to have my weekends back,
Yep.
but this is always a good time.
Hello to everyone who's joined. It looks like we're right at the top of the hour, so maybe we'll give folks about a minute to get on the line. But thank you all for being here already. Thank you all for being here. I think we'll go ahead and get started and allow folks to continue joining over the next few minutes. We'll follow our usual agenda. We'll hand it over to Heather and Michelle to give any introductory comments they want to make. We'll do a roll call and announcements, and then we'll get into the part that everyone's here for, which is the CHHS review of bills and all things going on in the legislative session. And with that, I will hand it over to Heather and Michelle.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's terrific to be with you. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us on a beautiful Monday afternoon. I know that there are just a couple of these calls left. So again, really appreciate the chance to lean into CHHS's expertise to guide us in understanding what impact has happened so far and because I know that's something we're following closely at the local level and certainly related to state and federal policy too. So thanks for joining us, Michelle.
Ditto to what Heather said, and hi everyone. It's good to see you and thanks for joining us again. It's been a interesting few months. So thanks so much to Ben for keeping us on track. And with that, I think I'll probably pass over to Ben unless Summer has some updates.
I think we have a couple quick things, then we'll hand it over to Ben. First, we'll do the roll call here. I'm just going to call on the voting members whom I haven't already seen on the screen. So is anyone here from Senator Hester's office? Okay. Do we have Dr. Lansing on the line? I think she may have said she wasn't able to make it today. What about Dr. Range? Okay, and then lastly, I don't think we do, but I'll check anyway. Oh, Diana just joined as I was saying that. Okay, so Diana is here. And that completes the roll call. Make the announcements really short. These are just all the upcoming meetings. And actually, let me go ahead and correct this one. So we do not have this meeting next Monday. We have a meeting of this committee the following Monday. We are skipping the April 7th meeting so that we can come back together on April 14th and recap everything that happened once the session has officially concluded. Other dates to be aware of for those who attend other committee meetings for the council, we have the Environment and Production Committee meeting on April 10th. In that one, we'll be starting to discuss preliminary report recommendations. And then the full FSRC meeting will be on April 17th. And then a little bit later, distribution and access will be toward the end of the month, April 24th. So with that, we can skip this. You all know how to join this meeting. We'll have our final one on the 14th. I will hand it over to Ben.
Thanks, everybody. I'm just going to get the slides pulled up. Well, welcome. I hope everybody is enjoying the nice weather. I am, except for the allergens part. Woke up with a bunch of pollen on my car. So I'm guessing that is a relatable experience. We have made it almost to the end of the 2025 legislative session. A lot has happened in the last week that I'm going to get into. We are keeping close tabs on all of our priority bills in the tracking sheet. A lot is going to happen between now and midnight on the 7th, and we'll make sure that we'll get things updated. The way we color code things in the legislative tracking sheet, if it's highlighted in yellow, that means it's passed one chamber. If it's highlighted in green, it means it's passed both chambers in identical form and is ready to be presented to the governor. Highlighted in red means that the bill has been withdrawn or received an unfavorable report. Skip over the important dates. You know, the big one is just 1 week away. So they're just going to power ahead. There are going to be days with multiple sessions this week as they try and work through hundreds of different bills. I'll start quickly with the budget. I know we talked a lot about the budget last week. The House of Delegates passed both the budget itself and the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act. It was a very contentious debate. It passed on a party line vote. The Senate is going to start debate on their version of the budget today. There are small differences between the House and Senate versions. A couple of spending items here or there. I know one difference in the Senate bill is they're going to set automatic spending cut triggers contingent upon federal cuts to Medicaid, and that's something that's not in the House bill. I expect that they will work out their differences by the end of this week. And we'll have a conference report reconciling the two versions of the bill. In terms of the content of the bill, I took a close look at the spending side from what we could tell from the House version last week. There's not that much that I think is noteworthy for this group. All the cuts, excuse me. Sorry about that. I wasn't kidding about the allergies. All of the cuts we were concerned about Somatic, Marbitco, those have been restored in both the House and Senate versions of the final budget. And there weren't any other new cuts that looked particularly concerning from my perspective. Most of the debate in the House of Delegates, at least, centered around the revenue side, which is just has a lot of controversial provisions. And like I said, it was a very heated debate on revenue raisers. So that's the budget situation. I expect it to be resolved by Friday, one way or another, and they will present that budget to the governor by the end of the week. So I'm going to start on bills that are moving through one house or another that have had hearings. Our FSRC definitions and reports bill already passed the House, had a Senate hearing last week. Anna Sierra from MDEM was there to testify in support with the amendments that were introduced in the House of Representatives. A couple of questions, one of them from Vice Chair Kagan, just confirming that non-profits were able to be involved in the execution of this bill. But I expect it to be on the Senate floor shortly and don't foresee any obstacles to getting this one passed and signed. The Procurement State Department of Education Local Food Purchasing Program bill. This one passed the House. The House bill is making its way through the Senate. They're also moving the Senate version of the bill, which leads me to a 15-second tangent on legislative procedures. Sometimes, if only one version of a cross-filed bill has passed prior to the crossover deadline, if they agree to a final version of the bill, they might move both the House and Senate versions just so that the sponsors of the House and Senate versions get to have their name on a bill that gets signed into law. So they will just make SB 177 conform with House Bill 56, and they'll pass both and send both to the governor's office. We've started calling those sidecar bills, just as a term there. In terms of substance, we talked about the amendments to this bill last week, changed the structure of the program, which now will require the department to establish, when funding is available, a program for the procurement of local food and food systems. We talked about how they added a role for the Department of General Services and then expanding the proximity requirement for local food sources from 200 miles, let's just say miles, to 250 miles. Oyster shucking House loan bill, that's moving in both chambers. House version's already gotten a favorable committee report in the Senate. Senate's already passed second reading in the House. So there aren't any substantive amendments to this one. I expect this to make its way through the process over the next couple of days and be sent to the governor's desk. Maryland Farms and Families Fund bill. So I talked a little bit last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, about the amendments to this bill. The amendments expanded the eligible recipients of these funds from nonprofit groups to also include a large array of other entities that are defined as people under the definitions of this legislation. In the Senate, it passed unanimously, went to the House, went through committee in the House. It has already passed second reading in the House with no amendments. Same with the House bill, just a reverse in the process. So this one is also well on its way to the governor's desk. The Family Investment Program Child Support Bill. So originally this was an FIP and SNAP program bill about calculating benefits by considering the amount of child support received. The bill's been narrowed a little bit, phases in the program gradually through fiscal year 2031, and now only applies to FIP and there are no longer references to SNAP in the legislation. We had the House pass the bill, the Senate had a hearing on it. There was no testimony in opposition and only sponsor testimony in support. I haven't seen this on the schedule for the Senate floor, but I expect that this will probably move in the next week as well, given that there was no unfavorable testimony in the Senate committee. Maryland Higher Education Commission bill. This is another bill that got scaled down a little bit. Now the bill in uncodified language simply says that MHEC should include a question about food insecurity as part of the Maryland College Aid Processing System application. Passed the House on basically a party line vote, crossed over to the Senate. They had a hearing last week, only sponsor testimony and support, no questions or opposition. I haven't seen this one on the Senate schedule, but I tend to expect that this will move as well. The Maryland Agricultural Commission and Young Farmers Bill, House and Senate versions are a little bit different from one another at this point. The House added an amendment which included requirements for the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation Board of Trustees. They included that in uncodified language. Each chamber has passed their version of the bill unanimously, and the opposite chamber has passed the second reading version of the bill. So I assume they're going to reconcile the language between these two bills, but considering that they're moving in both chambers, I think this one is headed to the governor's desk as well. Department of Human Services Federal Commodity Supplemental Food Program, which would move the administration of this program under the Department of Human Services, passed unanimously in the House and the Senate. The House bill has already passed second reading in the Senate, so this one is well on its way. And then the Hunger-Free Campus Program bill. This had no House cross-file, which means we actually had a substantive hearing in the House. So this is the bill that removes the limitation that only public institutions could qualify as hunger-free campuses. It has expanded to include private institutions. During the legislative process, they amended this bill to remove the requirement that the government appropriate money. Now it's the governor may appropriate funds for the Hunger-Free Campus Grant Program instead of shall appropriate funds. Passed the Senate unanimously with this language. No questions or testimony in opposition in the House. It had its hearing. Has not yet made it to the House floor. I didn't see it on the schedule either. But chances are this one will move as well this week. Legislation that seems to have stalled after it passed its original chamber. Well, actually, this is kind of the broad view of legislation that passed prior to crossover deadline. I talked about the FSRC definitions and reports bill, the on-farm organics and wasted food reduction and diversion grant program. The House bill passed second reading with amendments. I haven't been able to look at what those amendments are, but I will hopefully update the group as this legislation moves through the process. And if there's anybody on the call who's privy to what those amendments are on this on-farm organics bill, we know that they already removed the funding mechanism for the bill, which was going to be the disposal surcharge. But I'm not sure if there are other amendments there as well. Talked about local food purchasing. talk about Maryland Farms and Family Fund, talk about the Maryland Agricultural Commission and Young Farmers. We talked about oyster shucking, a baby food labeling bill, which I think we addressed earlier in this session, requiring a statement about toxic heavy metals. That passed the House unanimously and has already passed second reading in the Senate. So that's another one we expect to see go to the governor's desk. Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act is a confusing one. Both versions of this bill are moving in the Senate right now. So the House passed its version of the bill. They sent it to the Senate. The Senate is in the process of considering this bill. The big amendment is they decreased appropriations levels for the administration of the Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act program. Originally, the funding level was around 1.2 million. That's been decreased to around 900,000. And there are a couple of other less substantive amendments in there as well. Because this has a mandatory spending fiscal note attached to it, it's been relatively controversial, as are lots of environmental policy bills. So it's been the subject of heated debate in both the House and the Senate. Still expect it to pass the Senate probably today. And then they're moving the Senate version of that bill as well. Federal Commodity Supplemental Food Program that we already talked about. That one's moving. Talked about the Family Investment Program and the MHEC bill. The Anne Arundel County property tax credits for supermarkets, that is moving as well. The Senate version passed unanimously. The House version passed with 1 vote in dissent, and it's already moving in the Senate. It's on second reading. Talked about the Hunger Free Campus Grant Program. The Maryland Food System Resilience Council Healthy Food Priority Area Study that has been delegated to the FSRC. That has passed the House, 130 to 8. It has not had a hearing in the Senate, which to me at this point is an indication that it might not move, if I had to guess. I don't know that for certain. They could still schedule a hearing on the Senate side, but there might be people on the call who have more information on that than I do. Legislation that did not make it through crossover and has not moved. I'll note that they are abandoning the effort to tax sugary beverages. That's not part of the governor's budget agreement. And then I know people have been interested in the Community Eligibility Provision Bill extension program, and that has not moved as well. And then just legislation that's been withdrawn, the on-farm home processing license bill, food and milk label product labeling, and then this alcoholic beverages bill to allow the sale at supermarkets. That was also withdrawn by the sponsor. And I know it's a lot of information, but I'm happy to open up the floor to questions, or I know if there are people on the call who might have more information about any of these bills than I do, or that's available publicly. Happy to have people chime in, and I will stop there.
I heard a bloop of a hand. I don't see one though. Did you see whose hand it was? Okay. While we're waiting, thank you, Ben, so much. That's a tremendous amount of information that I think my brain is still sorting through. So really appreciate your giving us that overview. I had one small update on HB 42, which was the Wasted Food Reduction and Diversion Grant Program. So, and I think that this is new from what you had shared last time, but my understanding was that in addition to removing the disposal surcharge funding mechanism, it also appropriates, it basically puts $3 million of funds from the Maryland Strategic Energy Investment Fund, subject to the governor's approval. So there still will be funding that is associated with the effort. It just is coming from a different source. And I think they're hoping that there will be votes on the committees, hopefully this week, if possible. I mean, I think it has to be.
Thanks so much, Heather. Yeah, I think I had read somewhere that they had changed the funding mechanism, but I didn't know from exactly which fund they were withdrawing that money. So appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree with Heather that as you were going through all of the bills, obviously we're at the end of the session. There's a lot happening. There's a lot we've been tracking, and we're getting the update in full all at once. So thank you so much for keeping track of it all for us. And I don't want to call on folks that I see in the room, but if anyone has any extra information about any of the bills, kind of like Heather just demonstrated, that they want to share with the group, or additional context, especially for the bills that are moving forward or seem to be, would really welcome that information. So if anyone has anything they would like to share, feel free to raise your hand or come off mute.
Michelle?
Yes.
Just a quick update on the budget. Ben's done a fine job with everything. One area of concern was a potential elimination for 4 years of funding for the agricultural and rural land preservation programs. And fortunately, and also related funding to MDA in the resource conservation cover crop area through the 2010 Trust Fund. There were no 2010 Trust Fund reductions as suggested by the Department of Legislative Services. They did, however, take a $25 million a year cut to the land preservation programs at MDA and DNR over the next 4 years of $25 million a year, which is a significant but not catastrophic. The Maryland Ag Land Preservation Foundation at MDA is expected, with funds it's carrying over this year, to have a between $30 million in state dollars and another 10 and 12 in county funds, a $40 or so million program in fiscal 26. And then in the out years, it looks like, based on projections, there'd be programming for MALF in a similar amount range. So not great, but not catastrophic. So MALF will continue to be able to purchase conservation easements going forward.
Thanks, Steve. I know that was a big concern with folks here in Frederick that I spoke to, so I appreciate that things have changed from what we initially thought they might be. Anyone else have any additional context or information? I see, again, I'm not calling on you. I just wonder if anyone from MSDE or MDA has anything to add about the purchasing bill for local products, or if anyone else would like to share additional context or information with the group before I think Ben is going to give us more of a comprehensive update on where the budget stands next.
Sure. I mean, I can just mention what I've mentioned previously, and that is we're in this is Leslie Parks from MSDE. We're in agreement with DGS and NDA to have this program in which we, through our online system for ordering and fulfillment of local foods, we will have an intergovernmental agreement that, will allow for one solicitation from the farmers to be able to supply to any and all of the LEAs. And this is something that they would opt into. So the language was agreed upon in the House. As been mentioned, it's the same language that went through the Senate. It was passed in the subcommittee, Budget and Taxation, and we're just waiting for it to get a full vote.
Thank you, Leslie. And just for folks who are maybe unfamiliar with the acronym, LEA stands for Local Education Agency.
Correct.
I'm not saying that wrong. Thank you.
Correct. One last statement. So the bill references state schools. It's a little bit misleading, as I said on another call. It's not necessarily state schools, but schools in Maryland, in the state of Maryland. So schools participating in the federal child nutrition programs.
Thank you, Leslie. Thanks for sharing additional info. I see a request from Lindsay in the chat, wondering if we could move back to the slide about the Maryland Farm and Families Fund.
Sure. Yes.
Lindsay, did you have a question, or just we're trying to get some additional context from the slide?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to read it a little bit further. It seemed really pretty noteworthy that they made it a match rather than a grant, but it doesn't look like there was much opposition to that. So thanks.
Yep. Yeah, smattering of no votes in the House, but definitely seems to be moving in both chambers. Once you get past second reading in the second chamber, it would be something crazy would have to happen for the bill not to advance to the governor's desk, in my experience.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ben. Excuse me. Thanks, Lindsay. If there's no additional questions, and if Heather doesn't have anything to add, I think we'll move to the next part of what you want to share, Ben.
I was done.
Oh, you're done. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Unless anybody has any questions about anything else, I'm happy to talk more about the budget. I can post some helpful documents. The Senate Budget and Tax Committee posted a really helpful 44-page summary of their version of the budget bill, which I will put in the chat. It notes differences between the Senate and House versions. As just clicking on the document, you'll see the differences in the two bills are very minimal. I think once they came to the general framework agreement, it was just going to be minor details standing in the way. So that was a very useful document for me to at least see kind of every new source of revenue and where some of the cuts are going. And then the last thing about the budget is I think the downstream effects on the increased cost sharing requirements for counties is going to be something that's going to filter down to a lot of local folks. So for a few separate programs, they're increasing the required share of the county to provide funding, and that's going to force the counties either to cut services or to raise property taxes. So both just very difficult choices. They did allow for the cap on county income tax to move from 3.2% to 3.3%, which probably helps a little in terms of adding additional revenue. Not all of the counties were already at that 3.2% threshold, so some of the counties it might help a considerable amount. But for the counties that were already close to that threshold amount, I think that's a major concern. Just that a lot of the savings in this budget are from increasing cost sharing on the part of the counties. I see a hand, Leslie.
Hi, I'm just going back to something you said earlier, not about this bill that you were just talking about. So hopefully it's not too much of a distraction. But the CEP and sugary tax bill, you said that's not moving forward, pretty much dead.
Not. Yep. Looks to me to be dead for the session.
Okay, I'm just reconfirming. Thank you.
Ben, I know you've talked about the increased cost share before, but and as far as food and agriculture is confirmed, do you have sort of a quick list in your head of what those are likely to be?
I actually don't think any of the cost sharing directly deals with food and agricultural issues. The one I've seen is civil penalties for unlawful incarceration, which now is going to be 100% the responsibility of the counties. I know the counties are very angry about that. And then an increasing share of teacher pensions, I believe, is still in the bill. And then the other one is paying an increased share of the State Department of Assessments and Taxation program, SDAT, which I also know the counties are very upset about because that's largely the funding that's gained through the assessments ends up mostly going to the state, and it's going to be the counties who are taking on a larger share of the cost of that. So to answer your question, I don't think, as far as I know, that any of the cost sharing provisions directly affect food systems, food system resilience, agriculture. I just think it's the type of thing where it's going to have an impact on county budgets, which ends up affecting everything and everyone. Especially since counties are going to be very reticent to raise property taxes, it just could mean general cuts in county services, which obviously could impact everything that all of us care about.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to monopolize conversation. So if others need to or want to ask something, please just put me in the bottom of the queue. But I'm curious if you have any more background just about how the governor and state legislators are both thinking about and putting, the possibility for Medicaid cuts in the budget specifically.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I know the Senate is putting a provision in there that would set up some type of trigger mechanism. So if there are Medicaid cuts at the state level to absorb Maryland's portion of those cuts, there would be automatic cuts to other programs. I don't know exactly what the other programs were that would be targeted for cuts, but again, that's conditional on the federal government decreasing spending on Medicaid services. So I think that's the big one. The budget itself, at least the final number came from the latest estimate, which factored in some of the cuts to federal jobs and just all the other chaos we're seeing from the federal government. And it did increase the projected budget deficit for fiscal year 2026 by about $300 million. So that generally has an impact. In terms of just preparing for Medicaid, I think it is that trigger provision that they're most concerned about. And then it's just something they're going to have to monitor going forward. The confusing part is the state and the federal government are kind of on different budgeting cycles. So if we do see Medicaid cuts, then given the impact that would have to our state finances, I think the Legislative Policy Committee would have to institute cuts during the interim. So during the 9 months before the legislature meets again. And they've done that over the past couple of years. They've had to cut additional spending in between sessions as new revenue estimates come in below where we need them to be. So that's the role of the Legislative Policy Committee.
And I see that Ann Wallerstadt put in the chat that she heard from multiple places that the trigger language on Medicaid will come out in conference. So we will certainly keep an eye on that.
Thanks so much, Ann.
Any other questions for Ben or insights or things that you want to share with this group before we pass it over to Summer to close us out? Heather, anything you would like to add?
No, I'll just remind everyone that we're taking a break next Monday so that we can let all this marinate and see how things end up. And then we will reconvene 2 weeks from today. And just a reminder to everyone to please, if you can, spend a little bit of time thinking about what from our work together this session has been helpful, what information or resources would you like to see that we didn't support, and just in general, what are things that we should keep in mind when the FSRC is planning for next year. And so that will be the a part of our conversation in addition to doing the final run through of what the final outcomes were. So thanks, Michelle. And as always, thank you, Ben and Summer.
And just to add one thing, sorry, I know we're wrapping up here, is for those of you who haven't followed the General Assembly closely, if there's a bill you really care about and it hasn't passed and it's 8 p.m. on Monday night, hope is not lost. They really will go to the wire. I've seen bills pass at 11:59 p.m. So keep hope alive for those bills that you're interested in.
Well, I think that's a perfect note to end on, between keep hope alive and also let's let it marinate, take a week off and see each other on the 14th. So nothing left from my end. As always, feel free to reach out if anything comes up between now and the 14th. Otherwise, we will see you all then. Thank you for being here. All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everyone.
Enjoy the beautiful day. Good luck with the allergies, Ben.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.